Earlier this year, a very generous subscriber from the channel gave me the money to buy this Star Wars cabinet. My wife loves Star Wars and she really wanted this cabinet for our living room, so she was thrilled. I wasn't sure I would mod it at first, but after some time, we agreed that we should go ahead and dive into this project. I truly wasn't sure how to go about this one since the yoke is much different from standard cabinets. I found Kongs R Us on YouTube. He did a great tutorial on how to mod this cabinet. I will link to his video in the description if you're curious on how to do this. So after some careful planning, we ordered the parts and decided to give it a shot. I always prepare my PC first. This is always the worst part of a mod. Transferring everything over and just waiting and waiting. I don't like to download everything directly on the computer because I would like to not have the chance of getting any virus or malware put in here, so I download it on something else, usually my MacBook because it's harder to get viruses on there. Drop it onto a thumb drive and just move it over and just sit here and wait forever. And that's not even all of it. I've got more to go back and do. Next was to drill new holes in the control panel for added buttons. I normally am not a fan of light up buttons, but in this case they wouldn't be regular game buttons. More like larger, square, and round buttons that look like what the 70s thought spaceships would look like. We nervously drilled the holes through the control panel and the plexiglass. Things went smoothly to our surprise. Let's hope for no cracks and no ugly chips in the art. Art came out pretty good. Once that was done, it was time to put the yoke back in and wire it up. I cut and exposed the wires, inserted the wires into an APAC encoder for the controls. Now we just gotta put all the wires on these and actually put the USB encoder board. This part is already all wired up. The USB encoder board is somewhere, so I'll have to get that on here now, and then we can hook it up to the computer. Since these are LED buttons, I have to actually use a different plug, I guess, and a different USB encoder board. Some of these power the light in there, some of these are controlling the actual button. My wife designed and printed some inserts to go inside the buttons. She used Star Wars icons and even kept the original printed look from the control board for this green button. I did the typical replacing of the monitor controller board, but this time we had to think about how we would power the light-up Marquee. I've never modded a cabinet with a stock light-up Marquee. After a ridiculous amount of adapters, we had it working. So how many adapters does it take to get this Marquee working? Well, the Marquee the Marquee plug comes down. It goes to an adapter here that will change the size to a larger size, which would be here. Then it goes into a coupler, then it goes into this thing that now splits the power off, and then it goes back over into the USB encoder board. It seems a little ridiculous that it takes all that, but that's what it took. So after I did all that stuff, I had days and days of troubles with Launchbox. I installed Star Wars Trilogy to the cabinet. That game doesn't really have a set exit button, so what I did was assign all of my emulators to exit using this left blue button here. Launchbox was set to exit by pressing that button. It would cancel out any game that was running. However, it would not work for Star Wars Trilogy. It was driving me nuts. I couldn't figure it out. So after 2 days of troubleshooting, I realized that Launchbox was showing button 2 as the exit. That was that button, but the problem is I have multiple USB encoders on this cabinet, so this one was reading as button 2, but I also had another button 2, which was somehow confusing Launchbox and confusing me because I didn't pick up on this for quite a while until actually someone reached out and helped me, thankfully. Once I got that fixed, things moved along smoothly, but my God, it was frustrating. That's why I always tell anybody who contacts me about doing their first build to not get discouraged. You're more than likely going to run into something like this. This one's technically my 4th build, I believe, and I'm still running into problems after doing this for 4 times in a row. So don't get too upset, don't start questioning your life choices, don't think you ruined the cabinet, you'll eventually get it figured out. Don't get discouraged, maybe move on, take a break from it, ask for help, that's the most important part, find a forum, you can even leave me a comment, send me an email, whatever, I'll try to help you out the best I can, but don't get discouraged, this stuff happens to all of us. Now let's talk about how I did the sound. Normally I would just use these under the Marquee speakers that came with it, but I really wanted to be able to adjust the volume without having to have some kind of knob in the back of the cabinet. Didn't really want to mess with wiring up these stock controls, so I went with my tried and true Logitech sound system. I did not want to put the speakers on top like I normally do because they would be very visible on this cabinet. So what I did was actually put a little, almost like a shelf inside the cabinet, took out the stock speakers and faced the speakers towards the front so it kind of bounces off the back of the Marquee and comes out of the holes here. It's not perfect, it's a little muffled sounding, but overall I like the feeling of the subwoofer in the cabinet. It just kind of reverberates through the cabinet. I've always enjoyed that. So far it's working out okay, but we may change it up in the future. As usual, my PC shutdown button is here. My sound controls are there with the rocker knob right here where you can just turn it, or you can just turn it off, which I like. It's like muting it. Beyond that, we have the blue LEDs on the back, which normally I do not like, but in this case, I really actually like how it came out. It's nice and self-contained, so I can still take the back off. So I'm inside the cabinet. All I have to do is just unplug that little box right there, and I can take the back panel off. Subscriber to the channel, Long Ann. I'm sure if you're watching this, you're sad that I did this. I know you don't really like when we mod these because this is really an interesting cabinet. It's true that Code Mystics really spent some time to make this look great. I actually, when we first launched this on MAME, it looked horrible. I mean, it just looked awful. I had to actually go in and play with the video slider options. I'm actually gonna show you the slider options I've set because it was just awful. I mean, truly terrible. These were all set to 0. That shows you how much I had to change them to make it look good. My wife was actually kind of disappointed, so super happy to make it look good. The only thing that it doesn't have is when you get hit or you lose a shield. This is all I've noticed so far. You don't really have any good indication of it. You just kind of get a shake on the screen and then you'll lose a shield at the top, which is a little disappointing, but that's just what we have to deal with. My wife's really not that upset about it at the moment. I have a feeling we'll be able to fix that in the future. It'd be really cool if somebody would dump the files from whatever Code Mystics did for the Arcade1Up cabinet, and that would be really cool because I'd assume it could run on MAME if they really set it up to. One more thing I do want to talk about is the racing setup. Let me turn this down. Normally I had this set to gas where you push forward. I did not really end up liking that very much. It was kind of uncomfortable. So what I did now is changed it to the triggers, which I never knew you could do before until I did some Googling on that. So I'm just pulling the right trigger now. That's my gas pedal, which is actually working out to be really nice. I'd say the worst thing about using this as a stand-up racing cabinet is the fact that I hate standing here. I know that sounds super lazy, but it starts to hurt the feet after a while of just standing here trying to play racing games for several minutes at a time. So we may look into getting a stool, maybe getting the Star Wars stool, although I didn't find those to be all that comfortable, the stock Arcade1Up stools, but it looks pretty darn cool, so may consider getting one of those in the future. All right, let's go over the games that are in this cabinet really quickly here. All right, let's go over the games that are in this cabinet so far. Now, just before I say anything else, this is not the final amount of games I'm going to put in it. I may add more as I go, so please leave me your suggestions if you have one you think I should put in here. First off, we have California Speed. Not the greatest game in the world, but I always enjoyed playing that. It was at an arcade I worked at. We had 4 of them, so I ended up playing it quite a bit. Cruisin' USA is an all-time favorite of mine. Cruisin' the World is a great game. I don't have Cruisin' Exotica because every time I've tried it, the emulation does not seem like it's ready yet. So if you guys know of a specific version of MAME that it runs really well on, please let me know in the comments. We also have The Empire Strikes Back, of course. This was already in the cabinet when we got it, so I had to put it back in there. Hydro Thunder, one of my absolute favorite racing games. This is one of 2 of my favorite racing games of all time. I love this. This is actually the PC version. The arcade can't be emulated right now. The Dreamcast version isn't my favorite. I think the PC version is my favorite. It kind of runs just like the arcade. Doesn't have a lot of menus to fumble through. It's pretty darn good. I'll show you guys more of that at another time. Outrun, classic game of course, don't need to say much else. Return of the Jedi was already on the cabinet when we bought it, so had to be put back in. Rush 2049, I just noticed that is the wrong art, so we're gonna have to fix that. This game I didn't like so much when it came out, but I'm starting to really love it now later in life. The original San Francisco Rush, I have this one even though the tracks are duplicated in Rush the Rock, mainly because there's a few minor changes that I wanted to be able to have, so I put that in here too. Rush the Rock is my second favorite, or it's tied for my favorite racing game with Hydro Thunder. Star Wars, it was already in the cabinet once again. Of course it's going in the cabinet again. Star Wars Trilogy Arcade, this is the one that made me want to mod the cabinet. My wife got to play it in an arcade recently and she really enjoyed it, so that's kind of what decided, yeah, we're gonna go ahead and mod this thing. So this is a great game. It looks really good on this monitor. I'm glad we have it in here. And the last game is the first time I've ever put a console game in an arcade cabinet. I don't normally like console games in arcade cabinets, but Star Wars Racer is a game that my wife loved playing as a kid. So she's really excited to have it in the cabinet again, and it works pretty well with the yoke. All right, so that's it. That's the Star Wars mod. This is how it came out. I hope you guys like it as much as I do. I know my wife's really happy about it, so that's all that really matters to me personally. It's really a nice addition to the house. I love the lights behind it. I love the new buttons that she added. I knew she could pull that off far better than I could, so I'm glad she did all that work for me. I do plan to do one more video with this cabinet, at least initially. I do want to just kind of go through and play some of these great racing games and talk to you guys about a little bit of them. Hopefully you guys enjoy that kind of stuff. I love just talking old arcade games and going through and reliving the classics with you guys, so stay tuned for that. That may be coming next week. And until next time, guys, please consider subscribing if you haven't already. I just broke the 5,000 subscriber mark, which feels great. Thank you guys so much who have already subscribed, and thank you to the new subscribers that I may be getting from this video. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. It always helps people find this video and this channel. And please consider leaving me a comment. Let me know what you think. What would you have done differently? Do you have any suggestions? And if you have any great racing games you think I should add to it, I do have a list going, and I will definitely check them out. We'll see if they make the cut or not, but leave me a comment down below and let me know what you think. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one.
Fatality.